If you'd asked me a couple of years ago, would I be shipping a car from Australia, I would have said you were crazy. 1975 was the first year of production for what became the iconic, legendary car, the Porsche Turbo. In 1975, Porsche made 284 production examples of the 3-litre turbo. Only 15 of those were right-hand drive cars. I was on the hunt for a 75 Turbo. I missed a couple, missed one in Japan, and like every Porsche enthusiast, we all use the web to search cars. I'd spotted this car in Australia on some Australian Auto Trader type of site. The car seemed pretty special. I wasn't necessarily chasing a right-hand drive Porsche, and truth be told, this is the first ever right-hand drive Porsche I've ever owned. It's also the first right-hand drive car I've ever owned. As I was trying to chase this car down in Australia, obviously it occurred to me, hey, I know some guys in Australia, so I contacted Grant over at Auto House Hamilton in Sydney and asked him if he knew anything about this car.
That was an ad that stood out, but we knew it was a 75 Turbo, and there's very few of those in the world, let alone in Australia. So it's one rare little car. And we knew a certain person over in America that didn't have a 75 model in his collection and was after one, and said that he was having trouble getting hold of the owner. So I thought we'd better go for a drive. As it turned out, he lived about probably 450, 500 kilometres from Sydney in a little town called Yass, and which is an unusual place for one of these cars to be. So we got there, opened it all up, and like he said, it was all there. Nice little car, lovely old guy. For such a rare little car, it was worthwhile going and buying. It was straight to the servo to check the tyre pressures, fill it up with petrol. We didn't trust the petrol gauge. And away we came home. It didn't skip a beat. All the way home in one hit. No problem. Magnus seems pretty happy. He's got his 75 Turbo on the way in a few weeks. It'll be going in a 20-foot container, heading off from Port Kembla, just south of Sydney, all the way to LA. So he'll have his new car soon.
What makes this car really special to me is it left England, went to Australia, and now it's in LA. The car has essentially gone halfway around the world. The more I drove it, it's like any Porsche. The more you drive it, the more you become in sync with it. You know, within a few miles up the crest, I was starting to push that car a little bit more. This is as close as I can get to stepping back to 1975. And this just must have been an amazing sight on the road in the 70s, early 80s. I often talk about having that Porsche Turbo poster on the wall. A lot of people can relate to that story. And that dream as a child, this sort of for me is a dream come true. In essence, the car drives similar to the 76. People talk about the first year Turbo, being a little bit more of an on-off switch, and the car certainly pulls really strong. Over the past 2-3 years, I actually acquired 6 turbos, 3 of them being 76s and 2 of them being a 77. So this was the missing piece to the puzzle of actually acquiring one of each year of the 3-litre turbo cars, 75, 6 and 7. Porsche sort of built the car right in the first place, and as technology advanced, they just basically made the car faster and easier to drive in essence. I was lucky enough to have Porsche Cars North America loan me the current 2015 edition of the Porsche Turbo left-hand drive car. My goal wasn't to compare the two cars, my goal really was just to see how much soul the new car has and how much soul is retained over the 40 years of development and refinement. Obviously, Porsche's fine-tuned the car along the way through various models, and it's not about how much faster the new car is, it's about the journey and the adventure along the way. And does that new car compare to the original car, and is it rewarding, stimulating, and exciting to drive? And from my point of view, the answer is yes, it is. There's a big debate out there about, does the car have soul? It's water-cooled, it's no longer manual transmission, and I like variety. Truth be told, I had a lot of fun driving that paddle shift car, and I drove it in manual paddle shift mode. I also drove it in Sport Plus mode. But I think the easiest way to sum it up is you just get in, turn the key, and the car is just hooked up. I'll tell you one thing, it just corners up there like it's on rails. It's not hopping over the road. It's balanced. And the exhaust notes bouncing off those walls, and it's an intoxicating drive, just like the early 75 Turbo is an intoxicating drive. They both sort of do the same thing differently. I suppose it's whether you're an old school guy or a new school guy. I like vintage watches, I like vintage cars, but I also like new stuff too. I've got one of those fancy smartphones. It's all computer technology, and the new Porsche Turbo sort of is a little bit like that. So I'm not saying one's better than the other. They both have a lot of character. They're both connected, and it'll be interesting to see where the Porsche Turbo is in another 40 years, actually. Look forward to seeing the next evolution of the current Turbo and where it goes.